Hello, thank you for checking out my video, and today I want to continue the lesson on function notation. So in the previous lesson we talked about how f of x replaces y and how it makes it easier to notate different things, and we can figure out what number we're plugging in. We can figure out which function we're talking about just from the notation. Well, in the previous lesson we talked about plugging in x and finding y. What I want to do is talk about plugging in y and finding x. But what would that look like with function notation? So in this first example, this is kind of a cutaway from the last video. We plugged in x and take the x out and plugged in 5. But what if we take this out and let's say we don't know what x is, but we know that y is 4. So you would say, okay, what is y equals 2x when y is equal to 4? Or at y equal 4. Well, it's the same thing, but instead of plugging in the x, you're going to plug in the y. You'll just say, okay, cool. Y is 4. I've got y is equal to 2x. And I'm going to take out the y, put in 4. Now I'm solving an equation, and I'll just divide by 2 on both sides to figure out that 2 is equal to x, or x is equal to 2. Pretty basic, pretty simple, everything. But what does it look like with function notation? Well, here it doesn't say at x equal 5. It just says f of 5. Okay, and this is where it gets tricky. It just says f of 5. That lets you know that you're looking for x. But when you're looking for y, it's not going to say this. It's going to say f of x is equal to 4. Remember that the y is the replacement, or the f of x is the replacement for y. So we're just going to say, instead of saying y is equal to 4, we're going to say f of x is equal to 4. And then we're going to plug in the values. So we'll say 4. We got a f of x. If I write out everything here, f of x is equal to 2x. We plug in 4. And then solve it just like we did before. Everything stays the same. So remember, f of the number refers to x. F of x is equal to a number refers to y. So let's take a look at a couple examples. Okay, so let's focus on this first example here. Alright, so it says given f of x is equal to negative 3x plus 2, solve for x. That's the first indication that you're not going to plug in for x. Solve for x when f of x is equal to negative 1. So we're saying the f of x, or the replacement for y, is equal to negative 1. So we just write that in. We'll say, instead of saying f of x, we say negative 1 is equal to negative 3x plus 2. And then you solve it like a regular equation. Subtract 2 on both sides. 2's cancel out. Negative 1 and negative 2 is negative 3. It's equal to negative 3x. Then divide by negative 3. This will cancel out, leaving x. Negative divided by negative is a positive. 3 divided by 3 is 1. Alright, so again, the f of x is a replacement for y. So when you see f of x is equal to negative 1, we're basically saying the component for y is now equal to negative 1. Alright, take a look at this one and see if you can solve this one. Pause the video here. Okay, let's take a look at this one. Alright, so we've got that f of x is equal to 3x plus 1. Solve for x with f of x is equal to 7. So we basically going to put the 7 here. Oh, change this out. 7 here is equal to 3x plus 1. And then just solve. Subtract 1 on both sides. Ones cancel out. 7 minus 1 is 6. It's equal to 3x. Divide by 3. And you get 2. Cancel out. And x is equal to 2. And that is how you solve for the input of a function given the output. So remember that the f of x represents the output and the x represents the input. So that's what we're doing here, solving for the input of a function given the output. The next thing here we're going to do is we want to compare function values. So we're comparing two different functions. So remember that with function notation we can use that to indicate two different functions. So if you see in this first problem, it says given the function f of x is equal to f of x, 4x raised to the 4, and g of x is equal to 4 times 4 to the x, which of the following statements is true? So they want to know if the first function f of x is either greater than g of x, equal to g of x, or less than g of x. So that's what we're trying to determine here. Okay, now, so if you look at the answers that's given, you could tell that we got 3 put in for x on everything. So we're going to put 3 in for x on both functions. And we're going to do one at a time, and we're going to use the calculator. So let me show you how to do it. So you'll come up here and you'll pull up your calculator. Right? And remember, we're plugging in 3 for each one. So I'll start with the f of x is equal to 4 times x raised to the 4th. Now I'm not going to type in the f of x part. I'm just going to type in the 4. So over here on the left here. Times x raised to the 4th. So what I'm going to do is plug in the number I'm going to use for x, which again is 3. And I'm going to plug it in and use the parentheses. So I hit this to open up parentheses, hit the 3, and then hit this to close parentheses. Alright, now the last thing I'm going to do for this 4 times x raised to the 4th is put the exponent in. And I'm going to hit this a raised to the b, so it lifts up, and I'm able to put in my exponent. See how that's lifted up now? Okay, so now that that's put in there, I can go ahead and type the 4. Alright, now hit enter, and it gives me my answer, 324. So I'm going to write that down somewhere on here. How about down here? 324. And I'm going to say f of x and I'm going to write it below here, 324. Now I'm going to come back and do g of x and type that one in. And I don't think it's going to stay, but I'm going to see if it does. So we got 4 times, and they put a times, so I'm going to put a times. Times 4 it raised to the x, and the x again is 3, so I'm plugging in 3. And if it helps to put parentheses there, since we're doing that, make sure you lift up your exponent and put in 3. Oh, let's go back, that don't look right. Put in 3, close parentheses, and then hit enter, and you get, actually you got them there until I hit enter there. They're both right there, but this one's 256. So I'm going to come back to my paper and write 256. And I got g of x. So now all I need to do is determine which inequality or equal sign do I use. Well, they're not equal, and the f of x one is greater, so I'm going to say f of x is greater than 256 because it's greater. So then I come back in and come down here and hit the one that says greater. Alright, let's do another one. Alright, so we got 2 of x and 2 raised to the x, okay? So we'll go ahead and type in what number we're going to put in. We'll plug in 2. So we'll do that. So let's pull up the calculator again. We'll have 2 times x, and x is also 2, a lot of 2's here. Kind of do that one in your head, but you get 4. And then we're going to do 2 raised to the x, 2, and then use this key right here, this a raised to the b. Hit that to make it come up, and then put in our x, which is 2. And how do I know that x is 2? Well, down here on all the choices here, it tells us it's 2. Alright? Now, once I do that, if I wait before I hit enter on the second one, I can see both numbers. This one up here is f of x. This one right here is g of x. Over here on the right. And they're both equal. They're both the same number. So I know I can just go ahead and hit equal. But if it helps to write it down like I did on the first problem, you could totally do that. And then hit submit. And there you go. Alright. Now that is compare function values. Alright. I want to thank you for checking out my video. See you next time.